Joe, you were talking about the amounts of money that are involved in this. It's truly a global industry, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So some of the things that we were finding, like as you were saying, it is kind of like the business model is really clear, and you see it on all of these different websites that are fundraising from Western donors. It's like, you know, they sort of have this model where you donate, you know, X number of dollars per child that you're sponsoring per month. And so it's really clearly incentivized that these people are supposed to sort of, you know, if you recruit orphans, if you gather, say it's $15 a month per orphan, and you can gather 100 orphans, and so you're making $1,500 a month off of foreign donations, you know, it's no one's looking into whether these kids are orphans or not. And I think that on the scale we're finding, you know, we're talking about millions of dollars in Uganda, and we're talking about millions more dollars if you know, there's also these tourism trips where people essentially come, and it's like either an aid group or a missionary group, or, you know, a group from a church that come and visit, and, you know, you play with a few orphan children in some kind of orphanage, and you help, or you build a well, or you do something, and then you go on a safari, and then you go home, and all that money is just constantly coming into the country. And I think that makes it really difficult. It's like, even like those incentives are kind of set up for everyone. It's a lot of money to be sort of trying to regulate and trying to prevent from coming to sort of an impoverished country. And, you know, one of the things that I think kind of what you're asking is, you know, this sort of model, that business that can exist, or like, you know, essentially looking to the West to donate to these kinds of charities, that just exists everywhere. It's, or I shouldn't say everywhere, that exists in all kinds of places. And a lot of the nonprofits that are sort of fighting that kind of corruption, you know, they're working in Uganda, but also they're set up in Kenya, they're set up in India and Nepal. There are people that are working in Haiti. So we found that, like, in many developing nations, this is something that is sort of, this is a type of exploitation that's taking place.
And just to add to that, actually, there are two issues here. Obviously, there's corruption on the ground, or people who are taking advantage of these children in these locations, who are trying to get money for their own benefit. But what a lot of organizations say that we've spoken to in Uganda, Ugandans who are working there, who are trying to help people or children and have their own legitimately run NGOs that are working from inside, they feel incredibly frustrated, being undermined by what they see as foreign donations or Western donations, which are being pumped into the system by, you know, well-meaning people who mean well, but they say it's kind of a surface level donation into a big problem. And so what their message was, a lot of the time that we spoke to them, was, you know, people need to really look at what they're doing, who they're giving money to, what hands it's going into, because otherwise what you're doing could be more harm than good. And that was a frustration that we felt with a lot of people that we spoke to.
Yes, and what's interesting also is that the heart of this, the so-called orphans, or these kids, many of whom are not orphans, but as you've described, have been sent to these orphanages to get an education, or at least hopefully to get an education by their parents. That these are the real victims. It's almost like human trafficking. It's not quite that bad, but they are the ones that are being used, because they are, you know, the cute little faces that you can take photographs and videos of and send back to the United States or Europe and say, look, here are the kids that you can help. There's something quite cold-hearted about that exploitation. I think that's the word that you used, Joe. Exploitation is a good one, because they are clearly being used. They're sort of a marketable commodity, and that's very sad.